And we're back. So I'm joined now with Christian Solskogen. I don't know what your handle is these days, but
no handle really.
Yeah. So he's here. He's a developer and also a graphics coder. So he's here to help us commentate a bit with the shader coding compos because we weren't originally planning to do commentary for these earlier rounds, but we realized we can and kind of should do this. So we're going to jump in. Yeah, I think it'll be really fun. So the next round that we have for you guys is Blueberry versus Alkama. Again, both experienced graphics programmers, and I think both people who tend to do really bright and colorful and very fun things. So I thought it would be fun to put them against each other in the bracket. So I think this will be really cool. And yeah, I think we're mostly ready to get started. So let's jump into it. And we are live. So typically what we see in the beginning of these compos is there's this like default tunnel thing, and usually the competitors will either kind of work within that or they'll just erase the whole thing. We can see on Blueberry's side, for example, he's just changing this out color variable to be something completely different. So I think he's going to, looks like he kept the UV calculation, so that's some kind of like pixel coordinate coming in, and then has calculated a new output color and it's just outputting that. Alkama, I can't quite see what he's doing yet. Looks like he's writing a ray marcher kind of scene thing, which is another pretty typical thing that we'll see. You can see he's defined pi as arc cosine of -1, which totally works. And then he's done some mod of time, which will give you this kind of repeating sawtooth sort of pattern. So I guess he'll use that as some kind of repeating time. And then you can see the typical distance field scene functions. Blueberry, it looks like he's imported one of the textures. This is a screenshot of the Solskogen invite. So already we can see bright, fun colors from Blueberry. And yep, still more setup for a ray marcher from Alkama. This is pretty typical for a couple minutes into the compo. Christian, have you watched a lot of these before?
No, I actually haven't watched many of these. I've seen Tap to it once against you, I think.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me anything about these uniform samplers and stuff that they have to work with.
Yes. So before I explain that, I can take a tiny step back and say that each of the programs that these coders are writing is called a shader, and a shader is essentially a GPU program. So this is a program that the code executes every pixel. So as input, it takes, for example, the position of that pixel on screen, and as output, it will produce a color. And like they have kind of a host of different functions that they can use that are built into the shading language. So they can do things like sine and cosine, these kind of periodic functions, or basic mathematical manipulations of these values. And in addition, what you asked about is these uniforms. So uniforms in shader parlance are kind of like constants. They come in from the CPU, and then you're able to do whatever with them, but you can't write to them. So these samplers, those are textures or like images that are available. And by default in this setup, you have these FFT textures, which will give you this kind of spectrum view of the music in real time. And that can be really useful to kind of add some reactivity to the music that's playing by, again, our live DJ. So that's really cool. And then you have this basic checkerboard texture, which is this colored like checkerboard thing. You have a noise texture, which is, I believe, fractal Brownian motion, which is this kind of layered noise. Looks kind of like a height map or like a landscape. And then we have these 4 other textures, which are somewhat surprises, I would say. I tried to find some Solskogen related ones and some other ones. So there's just 4 kind of random textures that usually change per competition, so that's what we have there. I think that's pretty cool. So again, from Alkama, more a ray marching setup, and it looks like Blueberry is displaying the texture. He seems to have isolated a particular part of it, the 2020, and I'm not really sure what he's working on next. Maybe some kind of distortion. And Alkama actually looks like he has a sphere. It looks like a circle, but I believe with the ray marching code that he has, it's actually a sphere. It looks like Blueberry might be doing some. Maybe that's E for ellipse. So he's drawing. It's a distance field for an ellipse. Alkama, not sure what happened there. I guess we'll find out.
So basically, people vote for the result that they like the most, or is
Yes.
it the experience of seeing the progress that they've made?
I think sometimes both. I think you mentioned you watched Tapton and I do it, and that might have been the year where I was doing some like 3D stuff, and he had like nothing on the screen.
Yeah.
And then at the last second, he had this really cool cloud-looking thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that was awesome, and I think in that case, well, in that case, it's probably both, right? They voted for his looked really cool, and it came out of nowhere, right? Which is so. I think you can kind of, as a contender in these competitions, play kind of both angles if you want, or one or the other.
Right.
So I would say definitely both. Maybe it's more common to vote for the final result, but I think it could go either way. Which reminds me, you guys that have bought tickets, you should vote. That's woohoo.solskogen.no, and you can live vote for these compos. Alkama, okay, so he actually made a torus. That's what we saw. And now he's added some normal calculation, it looks like. So normal is a vector that for every point on the surface points kind of a direction that the surface is pointing. I guess that makes sense. It's this weird sort of mathematical idea, because on a physical level it actually doesn't make sense. But yeah, it's like sort of the average. I guess it's perpendicular to the tangent of the surface.
Yeah.
I think that's
right.
what it is. I think that's the only way you can really accurately define what it is. And even then, it's kind of an average. It looks, oh, blueberries, I think he's modeling a duck. So I don't really know why this was the case, but for a long time, there was this duck model that was really classic to see in a lot of demos. And I think the prizes that you get at the party called Tursok, which I believe they're having their last edition in October this year, they actually give ducks as prizes, these like spray painted rubber duck kind of things, and I've got one on the table.
Right.
So that's actually a really fun prize, but I don't know where that originally comes from. It looks like Blueberry's made one, working on the tail. And then Alkama, like I believe he's repeated this torus. I'm not sure if he's done that. Oh yeah, he's doing this in a loop. So he's literally making.
And now he inverted the normals.
Is that what he did?
I think.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of coloring based on the normal rather than, for example, lighting. So it definitely looks like something like that. Maybe he added, I think what he did is he added blue, like he put one in the blue channel and the red and the green are the directions. I think that's how you get those like teal and purple kind of colors. So you always have blue and then it either goes to white or purple or cyan. And Blueberry's now made a yellow duck. So I think an interesting thing about these particular qualifiers is that they, again, I've mentioned this a couple times, but they are shorter than normals. These are 15 minutes rather than 25, and I think that presents an extra challenge for these initial rounds, which a lot of these coders, even as seasoned live coders, probably haven't dealt with before. Oh, now the duck's moving.
Oh, some animation.
So just moving the position. It's interesting too that he made this with 2D distance fields. So he calculates some basic ellipse shapes kind of from the distance to the ellipse from every pixel. Ooh, Alkama's added some like spatial deformations between his, or some rotations around his tori. Gets this cool network looking thing. Very interesting. Still, I'm not sure if this is real lighting, but I'm also not sure that it matters because you get this kind of impression that it is 3D and that the surface makes some kind of sense, which I think is the most important thing about that kind of effect.
Oh, some blinking going on.
I always love to see when it's like a 3D thing versus a 2D thing because that's one of the more important choices, or at least one of the choices you have to make in this competition. And usually it's one you have to make pretty early on because it's hard to back out.
Yeah.
If you go one direction.
You think one or the other is a better choice if you wanna win?
If you want to win,
harder than the other.
I would say I think the crowd tends to respond better to 3D stuff, to impressive 3D stuff, than they do to 2D stuff. I know I personally like to see people always trying to do something that's very different. So I always get a little more excited initially when I see people going for 2D stuff because I feel like we haven't seen that as much. So I think I want to see where that goes. But at the same time, you can do cool stuff either way. And I think typically the audience will respond better to 3D stuff. So this is interesting. We see Blueberry, I don't know if he's colored the texture. Oh, he's masking the texture based on the green channel, so he's kind of go away. And Alkama has done something different. I believe this is what happens if you visualize how many steps you go along each ray. So you can see as it kind of approaches the surface, there's a lot of steps that are taken as you kind of glance the surface, so you get this kind of glow around things. Oh, is this noise that he's added to the distance field? That looks really cool.
That's from the noise texture that they have access to, or
I would guess you're right. I didn't see him do it. It might also be like, oh, it is. It totally is. You're right. Yeah. Very cool. And that's why it's very nice to have a typical noise texture just laying around. It's not that fun or interesting, frankly, to watch someone code a noise function. Right. I would say that's a matter of taste, but I think it's like that StarCraft mod where they suddenly, or the patch where they suddenly you have a lot of drones when you start out with. I don't know if anyone else gets that reference, but that made the game start a lot sooner, right? Yeah. At the beginning of the thing.
The first 5 minutes were pretty much the same.
Yes, exactly. So Alkama found another one of the textures, by the way, which is just some 2D pattern thing, which ended up color-wise fitting his visuals really well. I'm guessing I don't know if he saw the textures beforehand. I think the contestants did get the textures beforehand and had a chance to warm up, so he might have. Otherwise, this is a very happy accident, I think. Oh, and that distortion on it too. I think given the time frame, these are both very impressive shaders. I think it's definitely not easy to get some kind of 3D stuff going this quickly and make it look good. And it's also very difficult to come up with actually modeling with, like modeling an actual object with any kind of 2D or 3D distance field. So both contestants have done pretty cool things here. And this is the second of 4 qualifiers. So we've got 2 more of these coming, and then we'll have the semifinals and finals, which will be longer rounds. And it has yet to be determined which one of these competitors will be competing there. But yeah. Also, Blueberry looks like he's doing something with the background, some kind of angular sine of an angle thing, which you can tell by that arc tangent, and then sticking that into sine somewhere. It's also funny that he actually wrote out tau instead of like 2 by pi.
Yeah.
I don't actually think I've ever seen anyone memorize tau before, but can't say I blame him. Alkama looked like he was doing some kind of crazy stuff with the colors and seemed to have gone back on that choice. Probably smart. It looks really good as it is right now.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
Trying to add more movement. These parts of the compos is actually kind of difficult, I think. At least in personal experience, I find this hard because you want to add more and kind of use your time effectively, but at the same time, you might actually end up with a worse result. And I think we've seen some competitors in these competitions where that happens. They kind of ruin the thing that was awesome just by trying to use more time.
Right.
Put more things in there, and that's sometimes less is more. In this case, though, I think they've both made good decisions about what they're adding. I think it's all adding up to be a better result.
The text editor that they have access to here, does it give them some chance to like save where they are and try different things, or is it just
no, it's pretty basic. I don't even remember if there's undo in this text editor, to be honest. I don't remember. I don't think there was. Ooh, that's quite some flashing from both competitors now. Oh, there, it's toned down a bit. I wonder if he pulled in the FFT, and that's why it was so crazy.
It's starting to look very lightning-y.
Yeah, really cool effect.
This is looking better too.
Yeah, I like that it looks like he uses a noise texture to color the angular stuff. Yeah, this looks very lightning-y, especially with the distortion from the noise and the flashy colors. That looks really cool. It's a really nice effect. Just over 1.5 minutes left. I'm actually very impressed. I thought 15-minute rounds would not get nearly this far for both competitors, and same with the last round.
That's very impressive. So how much, because they have access to a live feed of the music, right?
They do, yes. Yeah, they have a live feed from the music feeding into this FFT texture. So it's just the frequency domain. So you'll see like the base is one of the pixels that'll go up and down, and
Right.
and there's also I think there's actually two FFT textures. There's a smoothed one which is reacts a bit more slowly, but both of them still are pretty flickery, so they can be a bit hard to manage. But if you use them right, which I think especially alkama has here, they can be really effective.
Oh,
Blueberry
color.
Yeah, I went with the classic blue and orange.
Yeah.
The cinematic color scheme, I think that's been called, which is always a safe choice. It's always a really good-looking choice, especially when you're pressed for time, which both of our competitors definitely are right now. We're coming up on the 30-second mark. Two very cool shaders. I also I just noticed now, alkama must have darkened the background at some point, which I think was a really good move, as it kind of separates the two layers more.
Yeah. It's zoomed out a bit.
Yeah, it looks more 3D that way, especially with the zooming effect, like the camera motion that he has, which I'm not sure is actually camera motion. It might actually just be object motion. Blueberry's tweaking the colors, kind of trying to make everything fit a bit better together, I think.
Yeah.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's it.
Done.
Both very impressive shaders. One thing I would like to point out actually is that some of the competitors, you'll see them, I think, accidentally kind of go over time by a few seconds. And I think in this kind of format, we have to forgive that, because it's a matter of making sure that they know that they're done, which is kind of difficult over chat. So
right.
We're going to ignore that. In case you see that, that's why we're letting that slide. Anyway, two very strong contestants. Alkama and Blueberry both came out with really cool shaders and very different shaders. So this is my favorite kind of compo to see, where the entries are so different.
And they've both been pretty entertaining the whole way through. So
definitely a lot of things that are constantly developing. It didn't really seem like either one got stuck, which I think is really cool. So definitely 15 minutes and very well spent. So the results are in. We have for alkama has 51 points versus Blueberry's 9 points. So alkama is the winner. Everyone give alkama a round of applause. Very, very cool shader. All right, so that's the second qualifying round. I believe we will go into the next qualifier round after this. And we'll take some time to set that up with the next contestants, and we'll be back in a bit.